There we go. Hey, good afternoon. This is the Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session for February 23rd, 2021, 2 p.m. session. No public testimony is permitted during the review session. The first item up is zoning calendars. New cases, item number 30, 2020-8BZ, 173 East 83rd Street, Manhattan.
Okay, this is a legalization for a yoga studio. Sorry. We have proof of service of initial application to officials. Excuse me. And of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors, plus lobby posting. The community board recommends approval. We have fire department letter of no objection. This is also a change in operators, but it's compared to what was previously there, because this is really effectively a reinstatement of existing. Everyone needs to mute, please. This is effectively a reinstatement of an existing PCE that received a permit that expired in 2017. I do have a question for the applicant. We have DOI for Ruben-Lobo LLC, but not Bode. So I don't really understand. Is Bode a company, or it's just the DBA for this one location? My understanding was it's not. So why wasn't the DOI done for Bode? They need to incorporate the acoustical drawings that they sent us separately into the main set and key those drawings to the plans. This is a studio where there's residences above. We have interior photos. This location seems not to be accessible for people with motor disabilities. And apparently, according to the drawings, the applicant obtained a DOB reconsideration for accessibility. They should provide a copy to us so that we have that. Those are my comments. Vice Chair Shanda?
Yeah, my comment was with regards to the sound, and the sound detail that was provided should be part of the submission package. That's it.
Okay. And Commissioner Ali Brown?
Signage, is there any signage here?
Okay. Commissioner Sheta? You're muted. You're muted.
Yep. What's wrong with me today? Okay, I'm not sure if you looked at the same statement of facts I looked at, but the one I looked at, I couldn't see any description for the building. When we have a PCE, it's very important. There are some kind of information that I would like our PMs to keep in mind. If we have a PCE, it's like ABC, existing building information. Is there a residential? How far is it? Is it adjacent? And if there is a residential, what kind of sound attenuation? Do we have details for them? Are they keyed into the plans? If we do that kind of check during the initial review, our review as the 5 commissioners will be very smooth, and it will help even the applicant himself. Yes. But I'm not sure for this specific case. I couldn't see any description for the building, nothing about whether it has residential or not. Accessibility, nothing mentioned in the statement of facts. Fire safety, nothing. Violations, nothing. Maybe I did look at kind of an older version, probably, I hope, but I couldn't see any of these kind of information mentioned in the statement of facts. So this is one of the bad examples for statement of facts that's written for PCE, and hopefully if they can revise and resubmit that one, that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you. I think this was submitted before we instituted the check. We have these forms for PCEs, which I've never seen used actually, but I think this was done before we issued those forms. Which they do go through most of those issues, I hope. I haven't looked at the form in a long time. But yes, you're right. We always do certainly need to know the answer to those questions. We ask them at every single PCE review. And of course, the adjacent uses and above uses are critical because it helps us determine what level of consideration we have to go through in terms of impact on neighbors. So thank you for that. Commissioner.
Like even if we have a new building, this is something that's repeated during the past probably 5 hearings or so. If we have a new building and they are applying for a PCE, and this building is gonna have offices upstairs or residential, ask them in advance to give us that letter from the engineer. This letter by itself could delay a vote or a close on a case like this.
Mhm. Right, okay, fair. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner.
So, and Commissioner Shabeta.
Thank you, Chair. All I would add is that I'd like to know if the history here, have there been complaints by the adjacent residents? I understand that, and whether or not notice has been sent out to the adjacent residents.
So notice was posted in the, let's see, we have service of initial application to officials and notice of hearing to officials and neighbors, plus posting in the lobby. This building doesn't really have a lobby, so they posted like on the front door. And I think the statement of facts or the cover letter says they haven't had any complaints from neighbors. So, but we can verify with that.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. I think we did get interior photos, right? Yes, we got interior photos. Okay. Okay, next. You're muted, Tony.
I know.
Okay.
Sorry, the next item 31, 2017 262BZ, 18 Stanwyck Street, Brooklyn. Stanwyck Street.
Yeah. So we have proof of service of initial application to officials and of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. Did the community board submit us something? I know there was something submitted at the very last minute on Stanwyck's and then I didn't go check what it was. So if project manager could let us know, but we don't have a community board resolution. And I heard that they were meeting this month, so maybe they didn't meet yet, or we didn't get anything yet on them.
I believe the last minute submission was a revised EAS.
Okay, thanks. This application has been at the agency for over 3 years and received its first dismissal warning last September. This is by way of me apologizing to the applicant. I'm sorry that a dismissal letter didn't go out in late 2018 when it should have, so that the application could have moved forward or been withdrawn earlier. So as I said yesterday, we're hearing in these hearings last 2 days, a number of cases that really seem to have slipped through the cracks. I don't really understand why, because it doesn't look like the applicants were pushing on them either. Maybe they were, but I don't know the background. All of the materials, so they were all submitted in 2017. All of the materials need to be updated to 2021 data, including the radius map, because there's been construction since this was submitted in 2021 across the street. We need proof of separate and single ownership since 1961. And please don't just submit the deeds. Tell us what they say, because this idea that we have to be the forensic analyst of the deeds is wrong. So you have to go through the deeds and show that since 1961, no adjacent properties held ownership to this property simultaneously, okay? This is a classic use variance for an abnormally small lot in an M district, and the ask is very small at only 3 stories. Although I do have to say that I really don't like the lifting of the first floor 5 foot 6 inches off grade for no reason, which by the way creates a basement, not a cellar as is described on the plans, since the cellar, the so-called cellar, is only 4 foot 6 inches below grade. So increases the floor area ask and opens the door to an initial unit, hence changes the ask. So it's only a cellar if more than 50% of the floor is below grade, and here far more than 50% is above grade. The effect of the lift is a very poor street front condition that lifts the windowsills abnormally high for this building typology. It doesn't even look like an English basement, which is not lifted nearly as high as is proposed here. So the first floor should be dropped to grade, or at least to not more than 2 feet off grade. So I'm really against the lift like that. The other issue that concerns me is neighborhood character on this block. A full 1/2 of this tax block and both sides of the social block, Stanwix, are either in manufacturing use or vacant. So this residential use would be anomalous on this part of the tax block and on both sides of Stanwix on this block. The residential use on the land use map on Stanwix is actually incorrect. There is no residential on Stanwix. There's sort of a backyard of a residential building that fronts the other street. However, and since the application materials are very old, there is an enormous residential development just across Melrose that was completed in 2019, located in the R6A, which is across the street. And the top floor of the 4-story manufacturing building on Lot 1 at the corner of Stanwix and Jefferson has been converted to apartments, just the 4th floor. That was actually a BSA action. This new building at this location would also eliminate the chance of an assemblage joining vacant lots 5, 8, 10, and 11, which might lead to pleas for variances from each of these lots, since after this building is constructed, they would then be isolated and couldn't be developed as larger sites. Lot 8, for example, has a for sale sign on it. Lot 8 is the building on the site on the corner, the vacant lot on the corner. The statement of facts should be updated to reflect the subject application's owner's outreach to neighbors for purchase or sale to them, because I find it quite odd that they would forego the opportunity for a larger development. And we've had these kind of discussions before about applications where they're right in the middle of an assemblage, and this would completely destroy the ability to assemble. They need to indicate the proposed materials on the elevations. And as to seeker, it's open. Applicant needs to submit the requested revised EAS, which apparently was just done. This application needs hazmat, noise, LPC, and air quality review. So lots of open work, right? Anything else?
Community board's meeting on the 23rd.
Oh, okay.
Right, this is the one that they had asked to move around the calendar because they had to go to the community board, but we said the PCE was first, so it was not running long.
Right, okay. And Daryl has his hand up before I go to the commissioners.
I was just going to update what Tony said.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, so Vice Chair Shanda.
Okay, so with regards to the uniqueness, while I agree the site does meet the elements of uniqueness, they do. And I think, thank you for pointing out, these are 2017 documents. So maybe since then our requirements of documentations have improved. And so I'm assuming the applicant should factor those in and provide those necessary information. So with that in mind, I would like the applicant to provide a uniqueness study, which I think is missing or it's inadequate in my mind. The applicant should provide a site analysis because there are 3 other sites within the 100-foot radius in the M11 district that are also underbuilt, irregular, narrow, and shallow. So the applicant needs to justify what makes the subject site unique, or that these are the only sites with unique conditions, and kind of need to walk us through those. Also need to, and this is something going forward, I would like, especially in these situations, I would like an analysis to be shown of the sites that are within M11, and in this case, M11 and the nearby C81 and M11 blocks, to show, the analysis should show how the existing narrow and shallow lots and lots of that are of 2,040 square foot and less, located in the M11 and the C8 districts, are being used in the immediate area compared to the larger lots in these zoning districts in this immediate area. This is for me, and I think should be helpful for us to also understand in this neighborhood what kind of sites are amenable to M uses and what kind of sites are not being used for M uses, and therefore what is the fate of these sites. As I review the Pluto data for these areas, it seems the sites that are narrow and small are predominantly used as residential or are vacant or used for parking and storing. It is significantly larger sites that are being used for M uses. Also show the common ownership of the sites. Now, with regards to the building plan, I find the unit layout extremely worrisome. Though the plan says living room, it does not have any natural light and air. But once you go to the financial analysis, and there's another document, I noticed the plan does not list it as a living room. It just says kitchenette and then 2 bedrooms. So, which I think is the truth, is that it's like a dorm suite. Each floor has 2 suites with 2 bedrooms and a kitchenette, and that area, the accessory area, which is called the accessory storage area in the basement in the back, that's a very generous size storage area for 6 dwelling units. And I think that's will become the common space in the cellar for all the dorm suites. So it's a different kind of lifestyle. And if it is, and there's a market for it, that's fine. Then explain that to us. And then the financial should also factor in these amenities that are being provided, which I don't think the financial analysis did factor in, the accessory storage area in its findings. And also the financial did not show the floor plans of the comparables. So it is very difficult to say how the pricing of those units are being compared to pricing of a unit which does not have a living room. The applicant is also proposing a lift. Since the building is already lifted 5 foot above the ground, it is not accessible directly from the street line. So I'm not sure what the purpose of the lift is, and that is adding to the cost unless there is a value added to that. And that should be then analyzed.
The lift is what makes the apartment on the ground floor ADA accessible.
But the ground floor is not accessible.
No, the ground floor is, you enter at grade from the ground floor and you go down a corridor and then up a short flight of stairs to the units on the first floor, or you take that little Lula lift. So it's just a 1/2 stop lift that gets you up to the level of those apartments. So the corridor is the only thing at grade.
Well,
yeah, that's actually what's going on. So
okay, I see that.
Yeah.
I actually read it incorrectly. Thank you for pointing that out.
Okay.
But okay, I think if you have it at grade and have the units at grade, the units at grade would be ADA accessible, and therefore you don't need the lift.
Correct. So it's adding
Right.
some cost because they're having a 1/2 stop lift.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I hate it from an urbanism perspective. So in addition to that, but okay, good. Continue. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think those were my comments, especially with regards to the layout and how that is, if that has been factored into the financial analysis and such.
I'm not actually, now that you mentioned this, I'm not actually sure you're allowed to have this.
You're not allowed to have a living room without light and air.
Right.
So therefore, I think the drawing is wrong. It should be then corrected to just show it as kitchenette, And which is what the financial analysis, if you look at the financial analysis document, it calls it kitchenette, does not refer to it as living room on dining room.
But I don't think you're allowed to have an apartment under building code that
Exactly.
has no living room. So
Unless,
you have to convert the bedroom to a living room. I don't think you're permitted. Of course, we see it all the time, but I think those are illegal apartments where they convert a bedroom to a living room. I'm sorry,
which is what will eventually happen, which is what will end up happening in reality, unfortunately.
No, what I mean to say is they take a existing legal apartment that has an actual living room and they convert that to a bedroom, which landlocks the entry area. And then they call that a living room, even though it doesn't have light and air. I don't think they're allowed to have an apartment that has 2 bedrooms and no living room. I'm not sure about that, but I think that's the case.
Okay. So those are my concerns. Other than that, I think the uniqueness they should be able to address it. It's the next steps.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
I agree with you that there are smaller, vacant, and narrow lots in the radius diagram, and they should just distinguish themselves from them. I'm talking specifically of block 3161 lots 15 and 16 and 3162 lots 8 and 22. And I agree that they should provide all the backup deeds to show this lot was owned separately and apart from lots 8, 5, and 10. As to the financials, I'll start with construction costs. The as of right hard costs only are $257 a square foot. But when you add in the soft costs, it's $352 a square foot for a 1-story warehouse with no cellar, no elevator, nothing. Way too high. So they need to go through that and match it to Marshall and Swift. For residential rents, I have a question because the subject apartments are 1,375 square feet each, they say in the narrative. However, they're really only 700 square feet each when you look at the plans. So they need to correct that and then check all their adjustments and make sure they're reflecting the fact that the subject apartments are about 700 square feet apiece. Let's see. The comps are all adjusted downward for negotiability because supply is exceeding demand in this area. And I don't agree, because if anything, there's a housing shortage in New York City. So I'm not sure that downward adjustment of the comparables is warranted here for negotiability. Also, comps 1 and 4 are adjusted downward because they're on the 4th floor of the building. And this building only has 3 stories, but I don't really think there's a difference between a 4th floor apartment and a 3rd floor apartment, or even a 2nd or a 1st floor apartment. You barely have height to get over the buildings around you in terms of view. So they need to scrap that negative adjustment. All of those things I just said are dampening the rents. And that's why I'm talking about it. It's bringing the rents down. They could be a little higher. Their cap rates for proposed at 6.3, I believe is high in Brooklyn for a residential only property. They need to show proof that 6.3 is appropriate. I think it should be lower. And that's it.
Okay,
That's everything.
But this is only a 3-story building. So how does it get to be 4 stories?
No, the comparable is a 4-story.
Oh,
And what they're doing is they're looking at the comparable and going, oh, this is a 4th floor apartment. It's more valuable than the subject. Let's adjust it downwards. And I don't believe that there's any benefit to being on the 4th floor versus being on the 3rd floor.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Got it. Understood. Thank you. Commissioner Shetto.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to start with agreeing with Commissioner Brown about the construction cost for both of as of right and the proposed. They are extremely high. So they need to readjust these numbers based on something standardized, like she said, Marshall and Swift. Right now, we're in the neighborhood of 400 to 500. The proposed total development cost is about 2 million, and the building is about 5,000 total. So if we divide 5 million by 5,000, it's almost 500. I'm sorry, if we divide 2 million by 5,000 square feet, this is almost $400 a square foot. This is way too high. In addition to that, what I want to say on this case, I haven't seen like other option in addition to the as of right warehouse. For example, office building. I'm gonna repeat what was said probably 2 years ago in cases like that. We don't want to be rezoning the city, and this is an M district that's the variance is seeking a residential use. So I'm not sure if this is the job of the board. I believe it is not, and if they can provide us with another as of right, or even another lesser variance, let's say an office building with an extra floor area or something like that. And I would be more sympathetic with a variance, calling for an office use than one calling for resident. But in general, the construction costs need to be like relooked at. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Chiavetto?
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to be repetitive. They need to readdress their uniqueness argument to encompass the properties that were mentioned. They also need to show that they were held separate and apart from adjacent properties, and everything else I have is repetitive.
Okay, thank you. All right.
The next item is 2019-91BZ, 9709 24th Avenue, Queens.
Okay, this and the next case are quite similar, but they're a block away from each other, so we have to handle them separately. We have proof of service of initial application to officials and of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. And as I said, the community board ended up hearing both of the cases together. Actually, there's a 22, and we didn't really get a recommendation from this community board. There's an email from 2020 from the community board stating that it recommended denial of the application, but they didn't explain why. So it was heard in December of 2019. I'd like the applicant to give us more information on the community board and our project manager to reach out directly to the community board and see if we can get more color on this. We have 2 letters of objection stating that the lot is too small for a house. This actually probably applies to both of the lots in terms of objections. The deeds that were supplied, though with confusing block and lot number history because the numbers on the block and lots changed, seem to indicate that the property has not been held in common with either neighbor since before 1961. I'm curious though about the parking pad in the rear of this site and how it has been used to date. It's sort of weird. It's this vacant lot for a very long time, and there's this parking pad. So it kind of implies that someone was using it like the neighbor for their parking. Daryl, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, for the community board, we received both community board recommendations on Sunday. It was forwarded to you on Sunday.
Oh, okay. So what does it say?
They both was disapproved. So CB3, after review of this matter, recommends that the application to vary the floor area ratio, density, front yard, side yard, and parking requirements of the New York City zoning resolution, leading to the construction of a 2-story, 2-family dwelling be disapproved. According to the proposed plans, the west side of the yard will be significantly reduced, thereby negatively impacting the light and air needs of the neighboring house, and the quotations devaluing the property. Further, the applicant does not plan to make any provisions for parking. The driveway easement required resolving with the adjacent neighbor and as of today, up to date, has not been addressed. We believe that accommodating the proposals to undo our long fought for zoning resolutions would not be beneficial to the community nor the adjacent property owner.
Okay, great, thank you. Appreciate that, it's helpful, okay. I don't know what they mean by resolve the driveway easement with the neighbor. It looks like they're at least holding away from the easement, but we may find out more, thank you. Okay, so just to go on, okay, this was I thought, with the exception of the things that I'm saying are missing, I think this was a very well-researched submission with historical surveys and deeds included and explained. However, the statement of findings needs to go more carefully through each request and explain why each one is needed to afford relief of the hardship complained of, which is actually the width of the site, right? The uniqueness study shows this is one of 2 vacant 20-foot wide lots within the 400-foot study area. The site is 20 by 100 in an R3X where side yard regulations prevent development of a complying house. So kind of a classic where without a variance, you can't build anything on the lot. The request is also for front yard and parking waivers. And I see no reason for either of those waivers, no reason why it shouldn't comply with those, especially given adjoining property context here, a driveway easement and the standard depth of the site. So it's not even that it's a shallow site and there's no place to put the parking. To clarify, I'd like to make sure, is there a reverse easement in favor of this lot that burdens the adjacent lot 40? We've seen that on another application where there was a long dispute between the neighbors about the parking easement, the sort of the driveway easement. And usually these easements are reverse easements. So they would be able to drive their own car to the back of the lot and park on that parking pad essentially, or in a garage that they build back there. There is a very useful, I thought, what they called open area diagram at Z02, which shows the rare but occasional semi-detached house condition to demonstrate that the proposed semi-detached is the only solution to overcome such a narrow lot with access easement resulting in a 15-foot wide house. The solution would have been more typical, the proposed solution, if there had been no access easement so that the proposed house could have been attached to the fully detached house on the other side, since as proposed, this creates one apparently fully attached house, even though there's a 6-inch gap between them, at the center of a row of 3, which probably is atypical of the area. And so I would want more on that. Are there other situations where we're seeing essentially 3 in a row, either detached or 0 lot line, either fully attached or 0 lot line, 3 in a row. Additional supporting maps of the front yard floor area and 1 family versus 2 family buildings should also be submitted to support the requested waivers for floor area increase and 2 family 0 lot line semi-detached. The statement of facts refers to data, but as far as I could tell, there was no map that supports that kind of data. The statement of facts says there are kind of this many of this and that many of this, but there weren't any visuals provided to support that. There is proposed here a 6-inch gap between the subject building and the lot line. I'm trying to understand how in the world you build on that site 6 inches away from the neighbor's wall. And how do you maintain the walls of either building? Because it's not a party wall and there's no attachment. So what do you do when you have, I don't know, a leak, or if I don't remember what the material is of the adjoining house, but what if it was brick and needed pointing or something like that? How do you maintain the adjoining house? That's actually one of the many good reasons for side yard, among many other reasons. Sorry. I just lost my place here. My computer decided it needed to re something. Yeah. The proposed is a 2-family. In an R3X, the density factor is 1,000 square feet, according to section 2322, with a minimum unit size of 925 square feet. That's in section 2323. The maximum allowable residential floor area on this lot as of right is 1,000 square feet. So only 1 unit would be permitted here as of right with a 0.5 FAR. So I don't see the need for a waiver of density regulations. Like why can't this just be a 1-family house, and why isn't that adequate to afford relief? And I see other commissioners agreeing with that concept. 2-family detached are permitted in an R3X, but this would also be a use waiver to allow a 2-family semi-detached or 0 lot line building under section 2212, which I understand because it's kind of where do you put the house on the lot unless it's attached, but or semi-attached. But at the same time, that becomes a use waiver. So it's a lot of waivers needed even to do the most basic 1-family house. Also, the minimum lot size in an R3X is 3,325 square feet. And this one at 2,000 square feet is well under that. However, section 23-25 permits construction of 1-family residences without regard to lot size. So again, I ask why the need for a 2-family if the zoning resolution permits a 1-family and all that would be needed would be the side yard waiver to permit the kind of compliance with that section of the zoning. A case also needs to be made for the 1 FAR waiver allowing a 1,971 square foot house. What is the average floor area of the area of 1-family homes? So we often see applications for floor area increases on these lots. And so 1,000 square foot house arguably is small in this area. And that's something where, depending on the neighborhood, we look at different sizes of like what would be considered an acceptable size for a home in this area. And then finally, vinyl siding is what's shown on the drawings. Vinyl siding is not an acceptable finished material. It needs to be replaced with something else. The standard replacement is cementitious siding, a more durable material than vinyl, also better ecologically, and no EIFS, if that is what's meant by the word cement plaster. So not allowed, because often you see vinyl and EIFS together in a lovely, terrible mix. And the cement finish must be applied directly to the masonry, not on insulation, which is an unstable support for the stucco. Okay, those were my comments. Vice Chair Shanda.
Okay, thank you. I think some of my comments will be repetitive. I'll go through it quickly. The applicant needs to go through each of the waivers and provide a detailed narrative as to how the required regulations impact the development and how the waiver will cure it. For example, why a parking waiver is being asked? What is the zoning requirement and how would that affect the development on the site? We have seen projects where parking is provided below grade with a parking space in front. Why is that not being considered here? The easement on the site, same thing, and that goes to the easement. As you mentioned, can the easement not be used to access the driveway into the garage, into the building? The reverse easement part of it. The easement on the site does make now with regards to the findings, the easement on the site does make the as-of-right development infeasible. However, the applicant has not described the easement as thoroughly as I wanted. Just providing the deed is not adequate. The narrative needs to provide the history, the purpose of the easement, who can or cannot use it. Does the easement include the concrete pad in the rear? Though not clear from the document, the purpose of the easement, I'm assuming, is only an access easement. And is it a volume that goes to this an unlimited height. That's also another question. The statement of fact also needs to provide an analysis of the uniqueness with regards to the narrow side, because the statement of fact states that there are 4 existing lots that are 18-foot narrow. And another map also shows that the 12 lots that are 20-foot and less wide are developed. So need to provide the details on these narrow lots, development on this site, built floor area, FAR, side yard, front yard, when they were built, number of dwelling units, and therefore distinguish the subject site from the other narrow sites and the need for the waiver, therefore. And with this, also a map should be provided to back up these uniqueness analysis. The narrative should also clarify if there are any vacant undersized lots in the study area. With regards to the neighborhood character, the statement of fact provided a brief narrative of the number of built contexts within the 400-foot radius. However, a justification for an increase in floor area ratio, a reduction in the front yard depth and parking waiver has not been made. They need to provide the maps associated with the analysis. And what I mean by that is the front yard analysis, need to provide a front yard analysis of the block front and in the neighborhood. Same thing with the FAR and the built floor area. And the reason I'm emphasizing on the FAR and the built floor area is that this area was recently rezoned, recently in the sense, like I think in the last 10 years, was rezoned from R31 district to an R3X district. R31 allows single and 2-family detached, semi-detached homes, whereas R3X only allows single and 2-family detached homes. So it allowed 2 types of uses in terms of building for a typology, whereas the R3X allows only single types. And most of the buildings, when I looked through the ZOLA, most of these buildings were built prior to the rezonings. There has not been any new recent building built. So it is very likely that many of these buildings are single and 2-family detached and semi-detached homes. So you will find semi-detached, but you won't find attached homes because R31 did not allow attached homes. It allowed semi-detached. So you're not likely to find the attached homes. And that's probably why the applicant stayed away from providing an attached zero-lot building, which is not permitted also in an R31.
Sorry, they're proposing a 0 lot line building.
Right, but what I'm saying is in the R31, only single and 2-family detached and semi-detached are permitted, not attached and 0 lot line buildings. So likelihood of finding similar typology in the area is low. That's what I'm getting at.
Okay, but they did show in that that open space study, they showed 2 sets of houses on the block that seem to be the semi-attached. So they probably predate 61. These probably have 40s, right?
Right. Yeah, this is a very old neighborhood. So you're going to find buildings that are pre-61 and between 60s and 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not going to see that much of variability in terms of the building typology. And that leads to my other question, is also indicate how many of these buildings were pre-61 buildings as part of the neighborhood and also the uniqueness. With regards to the minimal, while the need for side yard waiver seems justified, the applicant has not been able to establish the need for an additional floor area and FAR reduction or the reduction, FAR increase or a reduction in the front yard and parking waiver. The applicant should provide an alternative with parking provided on site. The board has seen narrow sites where parking has been provided on site, one in the cellar and one in front.
Mm-hmm. But if this were a 1-family house, I think they only need 1 parking space. Right? I think
so I haven't checked that. I can look into it while you're listening to other commissioners.
Okay, thank you. All right, Commissioner Arlie Brown. You're muted, still muted.
My issues have to do with the fact that they're proposing a 2-family at 0.99 FAR. I feel that this is actually self-created. I feel the waivers of floor area and parking and density are driven by the development as a 2-family. And I think that they need to try for a 1-family, eliminate the density waiver, reduce the degree of waiver for parking and for floor area.
Hold on a second. Okay, Commissioner Sheta.
Thank you, Chair. That my only comment, and I'm gonna repeat it. I want to know why wouldn't a 1-family be feasible? That was my only comment. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Shibata.
Thank you, Chair. My comments in line with the last 2 comments. I'd like to, it's with regard to the finding, just if a lesser ask could be more reasonable.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
So with regards to the parking, it's 1 parking per GU.
Okay.
Okay, next item is item number 33, 2019-92 BZ, 2339 98th Street, Queens.
Okay. We have proof of service of initial applications to officials. Now I don't remember whether I got this. I didn't find in the folder notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. Daryl, you have your hand up. Can you also look for notice of hearing to officials and neighbors? Can't remember whether I finally found that. Go ahead, Daryl.
Okay, well, I was gonna speak on the committee board. They had something a little different. It was a disapproval. So their comments was the committee board believed that the approval of the application is in conflict with our law for zoning regulation. The new structure will be out of character and eyesore, inconsistent with the existing residents. Waiving the regulations requested is not in the best interest of the adjacent property owner and will not.
So it's very hard to hear you. Your connection is, unless it's me.
Sorry. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, better. Thanks.
Okay. The community board believes that the approval of the application is in conflict with our law for zoning regulations. The new structure will be out of character and eyesore and inconsistent with the existing residents. Waiving the regulations requested is not in the best interest of the adjacent property owners and will not be a benefit to the community.
Okay, thank you. Okay, in the meantime, can you then check your SharePoint for or your email for notice of hearing to officials and neighbors? I mean, I think we had a letter of objection, so it looks like they did reach out, and it's the same applicant, so I think it was probably done simultaneously, but I couldn't find it. Okay, thank you. So again, let's see. We have 1 letter of objection from the immediate neighbor concerned about the structural integrity of their house. And I just want to calm them that the buildings department regulations require that there be protection of adjoining property. And if the house next door, that house next door is to be underpinned, then they're going to need the permission of the neighbor to do the underpinning. Otherwise, they don't do underpinning, in which case a different structural method is pursued. With this one, though, there's actually a problem on the deed history. We have a deed search, but it didn't move far enough into the past, so I did. On Acris, it's very easy to see that this lot 62 was transferred in 1970 to a Mr. John J. Harris, where it was held until at least the year 2000. Then there was a tax lien foreclosure and a sale in 2014 to the current owner. Lot 60, which is immediately adjacent, was transferred in 1968 to John J. Harris, who continues to be the part owner. At one point, half the property was transferred to another Harris family member. So we have a problem about common ownership, creating the hardship complained of. With the possible, and this is something for commissioners to consider, with the possible acceptable intervening act of a tax foreclosure sale. I remember we had another case, I think that was M District, where.
Yes, it was in Brooklyn.
Yeah. So
It was transferred to HPD, and HPD then transferred two pieces. One to, it was under single ownership, then it did a tax lien sale of one property to person X and the other, another one to another thing.
yeah, but
Is
so
that the one?
no, so that's different, because if HPD owned both sites and then split it, that's a very clear city intervention, right? This is different, but I think we had a similar situation
Okay.
where both properties were held. One was not a useful site, right? So the owner didn't pay their taxes on the unuseful site. And then then Department of Finance forecloses on it with a tax lien. And we had a lot of discussion about whether the failure of the owner to pay their taxes, which is all it is, this real estate taxes, right, is effectively a self-created hardship. And so that's a discussion that I would like to have, because until something like 2000, the owner paid their taxes, and the amount of taxes was actually quite small. So you can see on the web on ACRIS how much money satisfied the tax lien. I think the purchase price was like $25,000 or something for this lot. And so, and that is just curing the tax lien. There also may have been a bank foreclosure, so maybe the acquisition also included buying out the bank. I don't know, because that much I can't figure out from looking at ACRIS. But so that's the thing, is, was a foreclosure based on simply not paying taxes on a arguably useful lot, like I could have expanded my house or used it for parking or whatever. Is that an intervening, is the foreclosure an acceptable intervening event, or was this self-created? I don't have the answer. I just am putting out the situation. With this one, otherwise, the data provided is similar to the previous, but we need backup materials as stated in the previous one to support the conclusions in the statement of facts with respect to 2-family versus 1-family floor areas and building widths. But I also believe that this could be a 1-family house. There's no reason why not. What's particularly strange about this lot is that it appears to be the only 20-foot lot on the block, with all of the others 30 feet or 40 feet wide. So that I found, that was what kind of alerted me to the idea that maybe it was held in common with another 20-foot wide lot, because everything else is 40 feet wide. Like, why is this one only 20? So it's very anomalous in terms of tax lot subdivisions. And here, although the lot is the same 20-foot wide as in the other site, the proposal is for a full lot width building instead of the 15-foot wide building of the previous proposal. So I asked then, why isn't 15 feet the minimum variance? And why can't the 30-foot deep rear yard be provided, which is not being provided here? They're looking for a rear yard waiver. You know, in terms of this side yards, if you have 5 feet to play with, or maybe 6 feet, if it turns out that there's 14-foot wide houses typical of the neighborhood, then you arguably have enough room to pull this property off of the tax lot lines and create kind of little alleyways on the side, which provides access like 3 feet or 2.5 foot access to the sides of the building, because I'm really concerned that you're not going to be able to maintain the side of the building if it's 0 lot line, but not attached to the neighbor, right? And I'm not suggesting it should be attached, because the neighbor may have windows and bedrooms that rely on the side. Not to say that they are entitled, those are called lot line windows and they're not entitled, but nonetheless, there's an impact on the neighbor that way. And if the house were narrow and centered on the lot, at least it would stand alone on its impact. This is assuming we can get past the self-created hardship question. And also, I have the same comments as in the previous, why the density waiver where a 1 family is permitted as of right on a small lot, and understood this, yeah. And again, no vinyl siding, no EFS. Those were my comments. Vice Chair Shanda?
Okay. Similar comments to the previous one. The only difference is in this one, unlike the other one, which had an easement, there also one could apply it, but here in this case, it's more applicable in terms of the degree of the variance that is being asked. Per zoning resolution 2348, though it is not applicable to lots in R3X district, lots that are narrow, then the required width can be reduced by 4 foot for every 1 foot that by which the zoning lot is reduced.
Sorry,
so just
the
use
required width of the side yard.
Yes,
Side yard.
required width of the side, even though it's not applicable in R3X. I'm just saying, since the prior zoning in this area was R31, and this regulation would have applied to an R31 building on a narrow lot, if we were to apply the same rule here, then one could argue that you could reduce the side yard somewhat, and therefore reduce the waiver of the ask of the side yard.
Mm-hmm. Well, not really.
That would be one way of approaching it. Again, I have the same comment with regards to the front yard, the uniqueness findings, yeah, I think it's pretty similar. With regards to the minimal, it's the need for a side yard waiver seems justified. The applicant has not been able to establish why a side yard cannot be provided. Inadequate in terms of the need for floor area and FAR and parking waiver. The applicant should provide an alternative with a parking provided on site with at least 1 side yard that is 3 foot 9 inch wide. If this were a semi-detached home, that would have been permitted in an R31 district.
Okay, it would have been what? A side yard of how much?
3 foot 9 inches wide. If this was a semi-detached home, this would have been permitted in an R31 district.
So 3 foot 9 inches and that's it, or 3 foot 9 inches on each side? Like what isn't there a 2?
One side, at least 1 side yard of 3 foot 9 inches, and the other one can be maybe a little bit more.
No, but if you were going by maybe you didn't have time to look at this. If you were applying 2348 to this site.
Yeah.
And did the math on, 4 inches per 1 foot? If you did the math on that, how many side yards would be required in an R31, and what would be the minimum width of each side yard?
Okay, I will have to get to that, but because I have it written somewhere and it's not on this document, so I'll look into that. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Brown.
I had the same comments as in the other case in terms of what the minimal variance is, and the fact that the quest for a 2-family is what's driving the other waivers, and so they should consider it being a 1-family. And also I agree about the information about the deeds. The deeds aren't fully accounting for all of the pre-61 to present times. It would be better if they put it in a chart with a summary statement showing exactly who owned what, when, and at the particular times that we're looking at, 61 and present.
Right, okay, thank you. So, and I don't expect people to come up with the response now because I just threw this out, but the issue of a tax lien foreclosure on one property, but not the other, both held by the same owner. Is that an acceptable intervening condition to sort of open this up to a variance, or is that considered a self-created hardship? But you don't need to have an answer to this right now because it does take some pondering. Yeah, I'm going to go around the room and then
Okay.
back to you. Okay. Commissioner Sheta, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Again, if you look at the uniqueness claimed here, it's shallowness and narrowness. Shallowness, it's just 2 feet short of 100 feet. So I'm not sure if this is like a big deal here. Same thing for the narrowness, 20 feet. Yes, it's kind of narrow, but it's not terrible. It's not 16 or 15 feet. We could live with that. So I'm not sure if the requested waiver is consistent with the degree of the uniqueness that has been shown. So I'm thinking of, again, a single family, one parking could be provided, and a smaller margin of waivers here. And if they believe that they cannot live with that, they have to prove it to us.
Mhm. Thank you. Commissioner Shibeta?
Thank you, Chair. I have the same comments as the last case with regards to the degree of the waiver of waivers. With regard to whether foreclosure would be an intervening cause, I think it's one of those questions that we have to understand. We should contemplate why the text is there in the first place. I think that the legislation was intended to address an owner who purposefully or with the intention of separating his property for the purposes of gaining a variance. And I think it's a bit different than than an owner who is distressed and unable to I guess in short, I don't believe the same mens rea is there with regard to profiting from dividing property and benefiting from it there later. That being said, the argument that is it still self-created is a valid one. They still were a party to the actions in question that resulted in the foreclosure. At this time, I'm leaning more towards foreclosure being an intervening cause, but I think that a bit of research into this would by the applicant would do us some justice.
Okay, thank you. To be clear, that the owner of the adjoining property no longer owns this site. So these sites were purchased at foreclosure auction by the current owners, who may or may not have been aware of the prior situation. That's always, we had one case where it was relatives. So it was mom and dad, mom and a child who were involved. So they were clearly sort of aware of the situation. That wasn't the case where that I'm talking about, where there was a foreclosure, a tax lien, but it was another case we had where it was relatives who were basically going to be splitting up the ownership between parent and child. So that's a kind of a different thing. Okay, thank you. I think, and we can move to the hearing.
Madam Chair, with regards to the question you had asked, so in an R31, a semi-detached home is permitted, and where only one side yard is required, 8 foot wide. So applying section 2348, which is special provision for existing narrow zoning lots, provided it meets the findings. And one of them is that, well, in this case, it may not. Individually owned separately from adjoining tract of land, both on December 15, 1961. So if it doesn't, then this whole thing exercise is moot. But if we were to apply something similar to it to be consistent with the neighborhood character, at most they can reduce it, that ratio of as I'd mentioned, and but the side yard cannot be less than 5 feet,
Okay, so they could reduce,
from 8 foot to 5 foot.
no, so it's 1 foot per 4 inches of deficiency? I think that's what it is.
Yeah,
Right, to.
yeah. But at the same time, it says that, however, in no event shall the required width of a side yard be less than 5 feet.
Right, okay. Okay, so they could definitely comply with that. Because only one side yard's required, so
Yeah.
that's all under an R31, granted, this is an R3.
Right. Again, here, if we are to look at it from the point of view, what is built? Built to an R31 context. Most of these buildings are built to an R31 context. So what are the elements of the R31 that one could use here and make these buildings similar in appearance and placement in terms of the neighborhood context? So that's why I'm making that statement.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, and if, for the purpose, for the purpose of the record, we're not saying in a case like this that we're trying to push back the zoning to what was. We appreciate that there's an R3X, but our job is to not deprive the property owner in the case where there's no self-created hardship, where our job is to not deprive the property owner of their right to develop property, because otherwise that would be a taking created by the zoning resolution. And the only caveat is when the hardship complained of is self-created, then we don't have the job of sort of correcting their self-created problem. And at the moment, we don't know, we haven't decided what the answer to that part is. Okay, Daryl has his hand up. Go ahead, Daryl.
Just for the proof of notice of hearing, we have it. I forwarded it to you on the 19th.
Okay, great. Thank you, Daryl.
Oh, Madam Chair, there's something I wanted to point out in the last case, the previous case. I think we have an opposition letter of objection from the property owner who has the easement right.
A new letter? Because I
No,
talked about a letter that just said, I object because of traffic and parking. No, I object. I forget what the reason is on the prior one, but anyway, we'll talk about it. We're not in the prior one now. So
Yeah.
but we can talk about it during the hearing.
Okay, we're done?
Yeah, we're done.
Okay, so now this concludes the public review session for February 23rd, 2021. We'll now commence with the public hearing. So the new case, item number 30 is 2020-8BZ, 173 East 83rd Street, Manhattan.
And Mr. Angelino, when you can hear us, please state your name.
Frank Angelino on behalf of the application.
Okay, are you by yourself or with any team?
I expect that Donna Rubin and Jennifer Lobo, who are the co-owners of the PCE, will be joining us. They were on YouTube. And
Yeah, they're here. We just have
Okay.
to allow them in. Okay, we're
Because
like
I was
in a second.
just as a little background, if I may, Madam Chair.
Well, I'm gonna wait, just
Okay.
wait. I have to swear you in. Let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Are they in?
So we have Donna Matlin in, and I think we have Jennifer Lobo. So just unmute yourselves. Yeah, they're both in. I'm here.
Okay. Raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board, and to respond honestly to board member questions?
I do.
Ms. Matlin, Ms. Lubin?
They're rejoining as panelists in case they would like to use their video.
Hello? Yes, just say yes.
Yes.
Yes, because you're agreeing to testify and tell the truth, basically. Okay.
Okay. Proceed, Mr. Angelino.
As by way of background, this application, which was filed last year, is for the reestablishment of a physical culture establishment that was approved in 2007 at the same location with the same two owners. Unfortunately, the deadline for submitting the extension of term application wasn't uncovered until 2 months after the period that we had to file it, so that required a new case. But in all extents, this is the exact same application as was approved by the board in 2007 and was in operation until COVID restrictions basically shut it down for 12 years. The only changes in the application is the name. Previously, it was Bikram Yoga, and at present, it operates under the name of Bodhi, BODE NYC. And the other change in the application is that whereas massage was approved in the prior application, in this application, they no longer give massage. So that's been dropped out of the request that is being made in this application. In all other respects, everything is exactly the same as what was approved in 2007.
Okay, can you just explain though, when we sent to the Department of Investigation, it was under the actual names of the principals as opposed to under Bode? Are there other Bodes or other Bikram studios now called Bode, or that's just your DBA?
Our LLC name is Ruben Lobo LLC, and our DBA is Bodhi NYC.
Okay, so I'd really like to make sure that our counsel, when they write the resolution, makes this really clear, because the DOI investigation was not for Bode, it was for Ruben Logo LLC. Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Okay, anything else you want to add, Mr. Angelino?
Not at this time.
Well, there were some other questions. So we wanted to see, you heard our review session, right? We needed the acoustical drawings incorporated into the main set and keyed to the plan, right?
That could be done. Mhm.
Okay. And then I wanted a copy of the DOB reconsideration that permitted this site not to have an elevator that goes to the second floor.
Yes, we could supply that.
Okay. And then we also asked that the statement of facts be improved to describe the building. In other words, is it an existing building? Yes.
Mhm.
Who are the occupants in the building? This is on the second floor. So what's the retail on the first floor, and who lives above, or what is the occupancy above? I know it's residential above, but you didn't tell us that. And what was the other one? Nothing mentioned. Oh, fire safety wasn't discussed. ADA access wasn't discussed. I found that on the drawing, where there was a note on the drawing that said you had the reconsideration, but all of that's supposed to be in the statement of facts. So please improve that. And then one of our commissioners, Commissioner Shabeta, asked, have there been any complaints by residents about noise from the studio?
Okay, we can answer those questions if you like on the record now, starting with the last one.
Yes.
And the owners, I asked the owners whether or not there have been, since it has a 13-year history of operation, and since in the statement of facts we described that there is 80% of the classes have zero music, and it is a yoga studio, so that everything is very low-keyed and quiet. I asked the owners whether or not there had been any complaints, either from the people in the building or from the people that use the PCE. And Donna or Jennifer, you'd like to respond on the record on that? Whether or not there've been any complaints by anyone?
No, I mean, we don't even like loud noise in our lobby when classes are going on. So we ask everyone to keep their voices down in the lobby. So we're a very quiet business, so we can keep it, a peaceful environment.
Okay. So the answer is no complaint.
No.
Okay.
Right, exactly.
Okay. All right. I don't know if there is anything else. Any other questions? Oh, Commissioner Ollie Brown, go ahead.
Signage, can you detail whether there's signage?
We just
Exterior
have to have-
signage?
Oh, sorry, Frank, go ahead.
Whether or not there's exterior signage is the question.
It's interior in the window.
We used to have awnings when we first were in there, like awnings outside of all the windows. And then we took down all the awnings actually. So now it's just inside. There's no awnings at all.
Okay, so now it's only essentially decals on the windows?
Yeah. Yeah.
Only decals, okay. Okay, so let's go to the public. Tony, you're muted.
2020-8BZ, 173 East 83rd Street, Manhattan. If you wish to call in, it is 646-558-8656. Zoom webinar ID number is 925-0261-2349, and the passcode is 962863. If you're already in the Zoom room, please raise your hand. If you're calling in, *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute.
Okay, so far I don't see anyone, but they haven't had much chance. So I'd just like to ask, how much time do you need to submit the revised statement of facts that goes through these issues, a copy of the reconsideration from DOB about ADA access, and the acoustical drawings key to the plans and the whole set all put together?
We could submit that within 2 weeks.
2 weeks, okay. All right then. I don't see anyone calling in. So then I think we're good. So I would like to make a motion to close this, and I'm giving you, just to be safe, 3 weeks to submit, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Chair Perlmutter?
Aye, this is a motion to close.
Sorry, motion to close. Chair Perlmutter?
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta? Commissioner Sheta?
Say that again.
Aye.
Okay. Commissioner Shabeta?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is 2017-262BZ, 18 Stanwyck Street, Brooklyn.
I don't know who's there. Whose case is this?
It should be Todd's.
In the waiting room.
Oh, he's in the waiting room.
Oh, really? Oh, there he
Oh, he is. It's there. He's there.
Sorry, every time you join from the link, it kicks you out for a few minutes and then pushes you in. So, good afternoon, Todd Dale for the applicant.
Are you with someone?
I am solo today.
Okay. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board, and before this board, and to honestly to respond honestly to board member questions?
I do affirm.
Okay, please proceed. State your name for the
So,
record. Proceed.
I did listen to the review session, and I thought the comments were very clear and set forth a clear and concise agenda of items to address in an upcoming submission. I would just note a couple of things just right now. Just for some background in response to some of the initial comments about the chair about this application lingering for some time. I can't fully speak to the full history, but I would note, just so the board is aware, and we'll submit materials with respect to this because it could be good information to have. This site was actually under consideration for rezoning by the city of New York as part of the Bushwick plan. And we'll supply the map in the background, but that rezoning would have made this proposal as of right. I believe that the district that was proposed to this site to change to was an R6A or an R7D, which would have actually allowed for residential development of the 3.6 FAR and up to 8 stories, a much higher height, so much larger than what's being proposed. While that was pending, at least from the property owner standpoint, we didn't push for notice of comments or hearing dates, because if it had become an as of right development, then obviously the current application would be moot. Upon information and belief, the Bushwick plan is static right now. We don't believe it's proceeding, so that's why we're happy to proceed with the current application.
I just kind of a note to our project manager. We should find out from city planning what's going on with the Bushwick rezoning. I know that there's been some issues about public hearings for the Gowanus site, and maybe that's holding everything up. I don't know. Very unfortunate, since we hold public hearings all the time like this. Never mind.
And if any information is discovered that would be relevant to share, we'd be happy to learn on it.
Okay.
With response to questions that were raised, we definitely will provide a single and separate ownership chart, reviewing, and we'll not just provide the deeds, we'll provide a chart. This lot has been owned separately upon information and belief on initial review from the adjoining lots. Of note, reference is made to lot 1, which is not immediately adjacent to the site, but was the site of the prior board action. Lot 1 is actually owned in common ownership with lot 5 and lot 10, which are immediately south and immediately north of the site. So 1, 5, and 10 are all in common ownership. And lots 5 and 10 are actively used as supplemental accessory parking for the uses in the building on lot 1. The adjacent lot that's at the corner, Sherry, you pointed out that there was a for sale sign. Our property owner actually reached out to the adjacent lot owner to see if they would be interested in transferring title, and no deal could be reached. So I don't know what the current status is, but we can provide some supplemental information.
How long ago was that?
Probably, I would say maybe 12 months ago, at least. I believe that I can't speak for the owner of the corner lot because we don't represent them, but I believe that they were also waiting for the potential rezoning, and they were interested in selling based on an R7D zoning district. So
maybe worth reaching out to them
sure.
again.
Nope.
It all depends. Some people just are willing to sit and it's not a big deal for them. They could wait 10 more years like that. And some people are like, I need to get rid of this. And so they're eager to sell. So
understood. So in our submission, we'll provide an updated status as to the history and the current status of that particular lot, but it is under separate ownership. We will provide a uniqueness study. And I was looking back through this application. As the board is aware, our office has done similar applications. We'll provide a land use study of the similar lots in the area, and also speaking to Commissioner Vice Chair Chanda's comments about what the narrow and small lots are used for in the larger lots. We'll just point out that in the immediate area, and we'll supplement this in submission, but immediate area, like across the street on lots 15, 16, and 14 are all in common ownership. And then the lots, I think it's 16, 15, and 14 are in common ownership. So there's a lot of common ownership in much larger parcels. This lot really is isolated in the immediate area as far as the size. We will also, so single and separate, the radius. We've heard the comments. It was interesting to hear the comments about the raised first floor and the basement cellar issue. We'll go back to the architect and ask them to clarify that as far as the design. I don't believe that the development team is tied to a particular design with respect to the living rooms and the kitchens and the cellar and the basement. We'll get clarification on that. We'll revise the plans as needed, or if there is a substantive reason as to the reason for the design, we'll provide that. We'll also confirm the light and air issues that were raised.
Mhm.
I think, as was noted, the EAS, they changed consultants, and so there was a little delay in getting that submitted. It's been submitted, and we'll wait to review any comments that come back with respect to those. We heard all the comments about the financial analysis, with respect to cost and the floor plans and the third and the fourth floor issues. We'll review and revise the study accordingly. And I can you just say something there? Oh, and one other thing, just so you're aware, the community board, literally when I am done with this meeting, I'm going to attend the meeting this evening with community
Oh,
board.
right. Yeah.
So
Okay.
from Zoom call to Zoom call.
I seem to remember you asked to be heard
Right.
early.
I wasn't sure how long,
Yeah.
sometimes these can last a little bit longer. So, but I'll make it in plenty of time to discuss this. I think that was a quick, brief summary of all those issues. And we agree, and we'll provide all the updated information to the board and hopefully answer all your questions in the next submission. I'm happy to answer any other questions that I may have missed.
Okay, thanks. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, we now have fire department. They sent us a letter of objection.
We did
So-
receive that, and we'll address the roof up top access, which is a common request from the fire department for applications of this type.
Okay, great. All right. Daryl, you have your hand up. Anything you want to add?
That was just about the fire department. You already mentioned.
Okay, thank you. So they're meeting this, okay, got it. All right, so let's go to the public.
This application is 2017-262BZ, 18 Stanwyck Street, Brooklyn. If you wish to call in, the number is 646-558-8656. Zoom webinar ID number is 925-0261-2349, and the passcode is 962863. If you are in the Zoom room already, please raise your Zoom hand. If you are on the phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute.
Okay, while we wait for, Commissioner Shetta has his hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I haven't heard my comment addressed regarding the an alternative lesser variance for an office use.
Right.
So if they can address that in their submission, please.
Right.
Okay, we can do that. Just so I can initially respond here, and we can supplement it, Commissioner Shetta. The reason the warehouse was provided as the as-of-right scenarios because it seemed to be most feasible. The building that's actually to the south that was subject to the board's grant on lot 1 is actually an office building that has much larger floor plate for offices. And the last time we checked, they were lower on vacancies. So they're not full to vacancy on the second and the third floor, which the office space is. So that's why the warehouse was proposed to design, but we can look at the alternate as-of-right also. But that was the theory behind it.
Okay, so, a lot's happened. Well, this year notwithstanding.
Sure.
Filed this in 2017, right? And of course, this idea of rezoning Bushwick is only because Bushwick, up until last year, was boom town, right? In the sense of everyone wanting to live in Bushwick now, and everyone wanting to have either a place to live there or to work there or to work there. So up until last year, we were saying, oh, you're in one of those trendy neighborhoods like Red Hook or Bushwick. And we were saying you should explore instead a viable commercial occupancy and consider a variance that would increase the floor area. So at least we could stay consistent with uses in the zoning district, which is, so those would just be area variances, which are viewed as a less impact, right? So, and we actually had, I believe that was Bushwick. We had one application where the applicants actively came to us on their suggestion, asking for, I forget what it was, 3 FAR or something like that, to build a cool office building. And so now what's quite interesting is, COVID situation, weird situation with office buildings and all of that. My look into the crystal ball kind of thing is that the move to the big open office spaces that were sort of the trend of 2019 may now be shifting towards these smaller kind of office situations where you don't have to get into an elevator or share with everybody, where the offices are much more discrete functions and you're not going into some enormous collective office complex, but these private little ones. Now, so it's impossible to really predict but that just feels to me like I personally would rather be working in a small office situation like that than I would on 6th Avenue, in a mega office complex. But so that's one reason why we now are looking to these alternative ideas of a variance in manufacturing districts where that's a viable opportunity. So consider, and actually in one case, when we suggested that to the owner, we were actually, I think it might have been with a Zoom hearing, and the owner sitting next to their counsel or something and saying, really? They would give us more floor area so that we could continue having commercial operator? I'm not a residential developer. So actually it was something that the owner was happy to hear about in that case, or in a different case, right? So anyway, that's what I'm throwing out there as.
Understood. For Harrison, which was a case that we had before the board 2 weeks ago, that was also discussed, and we reached out. We'll present this to this property owner as well as a possibility to explore in conjunction with Commissioner Sheda's alternate as of right scenario issue.
Okay, great. Thank you.
If I could just interject, it's not really for our case, but for one coming up. 127-14-BZ was a case that our firm had where there was a intervening action that I think was before the board. So I'm not sure if that's the case you were referencing, but it might be one to look at as far as single and separate ownership and there being a city foreclosure for tax purposes.
So that, what'd you say, 127-14?
127-14-BZ, it's 101st Street in Queens.
Okay.
And I don't remember the full details, but I remember that, so it might be worthwhile for the fellow applicant.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful because we have these kind of slight recollections. Usually Tony remembers every address and calendar number, but it's helpful when we have input from others. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. So how much time to do all this stuff?
I would say, just to avoid any adjournments, I mean, because of the time that we've had, we'll definitely want to update the materials. I would rather have a little too much time than too little time. So if the board's agreeable, I would say we'd want probably at least 8 weeks to submit, but we can be flexible with the calendar.
All right, okay, great. That's very helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
You too.
Okay, next item is 32-2019-91 BZ 9709 24th Avenue, Queens.
So we have one of the owner, and I don't see the applicant though. Is Mr. Sangha joining us?
Yes, Marjorie, he will be joining us. Give him a few minutes, please. This is Summer. I'm not the owner. I'm actually the next lot's owner.
Right.
Omer is the owner of this one, so.
Okay, great, thank you. If you could, in case you haven't already reached out, just text him or call Mr. Sangha.
Yes, I'm doing that right now.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, this is Umar. Just wanted to point out one thing for this current case. I noticed.
Wait. You can't speak. Yeah, before you speak, we need to swear you in, but we'd like to wait for your, I believe he's your architect, is that correct?
Sure.
We'd like to wait for both of you to be here and then we'll swear you in, okay? And then you can, of course, add things.
Okay, sure. I got you.
Thanks. You know what I'm thinking, so as not to waste time, why don't we hear from Mr. Chowdhury? And then when Mr. Sangha calls in, we swear him in separately, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so Mr. Chowdhury, can you unmute yourself, please?
Sure.
Okay. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth and the truth? Sorry, in your testimony before this board and to respond honestly to board member questions? You have to unmute yourself, Mr. Chowdhury.
I have a kid crying in the background, so that's why I'm going in and out. Sorry.
That's
So
okay.
did you hear my?
I do.
Okay.
Yes, I got you.
Okay, go ahead. Okay, do you want to start?
Yeah,
State
so
your
I
name for
was
the
just gonna
record.
say that, sorry about that.
We're
So
used to the dogs and kids, so just proceed. We can deal with it.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yes. I was just gonna say, the previous zoning resolution was R32 for both of these lots.
Oh, not R31.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's good. I don't know, we're going to check whether that changes anything about our side yard analysis. That's what I
Right.
see Commissioner Shanda is already.
Yeah, before he joins, that's the only thing maybe I can provide input on.
Okay. And maybe Vice Chair Shanda, if you could also check the historical zoning maps just to make sure we know for sure.
So R32 actually makes it even more generous. It allows, R32 allows all residential types.
Right.
Correct, yeah.
But what about the side yard regs?
Yeah, I just got the easiest one.
Okay.
Out of the way.
And also, if you could just go on Zola and check the historical zoning.
Yeah,
map.
I'm gonna do that. So yeah, if you do a single family or a two family detached home in an R32, under the current regulations, 2 are required, and minimum side yard has to be 5 feet. If you do a semi-detached in an R32, you need 1 side yard 8 foot deep, 8 foot wide, I'm sorry. So that's consistent with R31.
And it does have the same reduction of width?
Yeah, that's the other one I'm getting to. That's in a different section.
Yeah,
So I'm just
2348, right?
right, 2348. And yeah, it would be permitted in that too. Yes.
Same story. Okay.
Yes.
Same. So to the minimum 5 feet.
Yeah. So I'll now go to and check the Zola.
Okay, great. Concerned that Mr. Sangha hasn't joined in.
Right, isn't lot line also allowed on R32?
Yes, 0 lot line, single family, detached, you're allowed 0 lot line buildings, detached buildings, semi-attached buildings, and attached buildings. All 4 building typologies are permitted in an R32.
Right. So on a 0 lot, like I guess 0 lot line, what was I gonna say?
You still have to have 1 side yard. It's only allowed to be 0 on 1 side.
Right, which in this current case, since we have variance on the other side, it has to be, it's only gonna be attached on 1 side. So with
Right.
the current layout, they will I guess, kind of match that.
So I don't think there's really any other, in the case, in this site, I don't think there's any other option than having essentially a 0 lot line on one side.
Right.
Because you have your easement and the building's only 15 foot wide. I really wanted to speak to the architect. Can you give him a call again, please?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yes, I called him. He's joining in. Just
Okay.
he'll be in a few.
So for the 6 inch that he left out from one side.
Yeah, I don't know how, this is a question for the architect.
Right.
I
I kind of had a chat with him, so I'm just gonna throw him
Okay.
what I gathered before he joins. I think it was going to you need to install some sprinkler system as part of if it's joined.
No, that's different. That has to do with protecting your wall from the fire spread, especially if you had any openings, but it's to protect your wall from fire spread to the adjoining property. Here he is. He's joined us.
Okay, got it. All right, I'll mute myself.
Okay. So Tony, you're going to need to swear him in as soon as he shows up on the screen. Hi, Mr. Sangha. When you can hear us, please unmute yourself. Not sure you can hear us.
Yeah, hi.
Hi. Okay.
Sorry for delay. I'm Michio Sangha. I'm the applicant for owner Umar Chowdhury.
Right.
Okay, let me swear you in, Mr. Sangha. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board and to respond honestly to board member questions?
Yes, I do.
Okay, proceed, Mr. Sangha.
Yes, regarding rezoning, the rezoning was made October 2013 from R3-2
Yes.
to R3X, not R3-1.
Okay. We've been talking about that for a while with Mr. Chowdhury.
Right.
So we got that, and Commissioner Shanda actually checked what the regulations are for side yards, and essentially it's the same as R31.
Right.
So we could use that as a model. So the minimum side yard width is 5 feet if you use the reduction analysis. Right, and R32 allowed detached, semi-detached and attached houses. So we're using that a little bit as, and I know you're familiar with this kind of approach. We're using that as sort of a guide to the urbanism. So if it had been in R32 and it was permitting that kind of urban fabric, then we would want you to analyze that urban fabric in the context of this proposal so that we see consistency with an existing fabric.
Thank you. Good, very good. Regarding lot line windows, as the 1965 deed I submitted as evidence of uniqueness and hardship, document number 7, there is a driveway easement is on that our subject road, but there is no air and right easement from lot who has lot line windows. So my understanding is that absent air and right easement, lot 42 cannot restrict adjacent building development, our building development. Mm-hmm. So there is no nothing to stop development on our site as long as it complies with the building code. Okay. That's my understanding.
Okay, so conceptual, and so another one of our questions was, your site has an easement that basically benefits the neighbor. Does your site does the neighbor have an easement that benefits you so that you can use that, essentially their property, to access the backyard?
No, I'm talking about the right, not line windows situation.
No, I know.
Yeah.
There's two questions there, right? So the first is there's an easement that you have that allows access for the neighbor to get to the parking in the rear, their own parking in the rear. And as we've seen on another case, it wouldn't prevent you if we said that would be something we would want you to do from building over the drive, as long as you maintained adequate height for a car to drive through, because it doesn't sound like there's a light in the area easement or a volume restriction. It's just said access to the rear, arguably for parking, right? So there's that. But my question is, is there a document that gives this owner, Mr. Chowdhury, the right to drive his own car over the neighbor's property to access the back? So there's usually a reverse easement, right? You get, I get. So
That, in my understanding, there is none.
So Mr. Chowdhury, you need to have a title company research that question. Do you have, and in fact, since you purchased the property fairly recently, though I understand because it was from the city, maybe it didn't come with a full title search, but you need a title company to help you find the document that gives you the right of access onto the neighbor's section of the drive. Okay.
So we kind of we did do the title research, and we couldn't find anything regarding that on the neighboring lot.
Did you have a title company do it, or you did it yourself?
It was a title company. I have to, yeah. I mean, I worked with the title company, so it's not an official one. Do you need something official? But we can provide all the titles.
So this is the thing, you need something official, because
Right.
on your own site, in order to use the full width of that little yard, that little pathway where the neighbor can drive their car down, you need, unless the neighbor's not using it, right? But you also need that same right if it was given to you. And it's very hard for me to believe it wasn't given to you, because that was like the standard way all of these little houses were built. It's always reciprocal.
Yeah, we can definitely have that done. Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Sangha, continue.
Yes, as to 6-inch side yard, and you asked about how do you do construction. So our proposed building is a concrete block, 8-inch concrete block on that side. So we don't need to finish that concrete block. All we have to take care is inside the concrete block.
So how does a neighbor, all right, I don't know. So concrete block that you don't need to finish, which is fairly terrible looking, right? But, and so maybe the neighbor, I don't know if the neighbor has windows without going on the photos. But so now the neighbor is looking at 6-inch concrete block through their windows. And I grant that there's no light and air easement, but my other part of my question is the neighbor's house is not built out of concrete block. Their house is built out of whatever, maybe it's a wood frame construction, or maybe it's brick, I don't know. How do they maintain the side of their building?
Their building is a brick building.
All right, so how do they repoint the brick?
That's very difficult, I would say.
Yeah, so that's why party wall buildings make so much sense, right? So,
well, what we can do is we provide a roof cover over that 6-inch space, so that there is no element will coming in. So they don't need to maintain that brick wall.
okay, so I don't know anything about whether the buildings department or even is okay with those, that's kind of idea of a little roof. So it's both a roof and walls, right? Because you also don't want rodents having like a delightful time in 6 inches forevermore, right? Going back and forth. So you would be then closing that whole thing. I don't know what the buildings department's view on that is. Yeah, Commissioner Otley Brown, you had a
It's
question.
also going to enclose the windows on that side. So
Right.
that's going to make for a very dank, damp, moist area.
Commissioner Otley Brown, I was looking into that also, but that's a lot line window. That's not a legal window.
I didn't say it was a legal window. I just said it was a window, and when you're going to build up and have be 6 inches off of that window, any moisture that gets in there is going to provide a very humid, damp, dank situation for the person who has the windows.
I think actually the building code requires that when a building is built within, it's a very short distance. I think it's 2 feet of a lot line window. The lot line window is required by law to be closed. So normally what happens is tricky, because normally what happens is the developer is like a big time developer and has the money to sort of pay off the neighbor and then close up the window. Here you have a more difficult situation, but that neighbor is required by building code to seal their window, because otherwise you've got lots of issues, fire issues, all this kind of stuff. And the concrete block is creating a very good fire rating between the two, but the building code, I don't think, absolves the responsibility of the neighbor to close up the windows. So that really needs to be addressed. And I know you may not have let's say a cooperative neighbor in this situation. So I'm not sure how you're going to deal with that with buildings department. Okay, continue, Mr. Sangha. So I just want to reiterate with that. So with the subject of this 6-inch separation, we need something from the Department of Building clarifying that they're okay with how you're going to address it, and including the awareness that the neighbor has a lot line window that has to be addressed in whatever way you're going to address it.
I got it. Thank you.
Okay. I see a hand up from one of the owners, or the one, Miss Summer Chowdhury. Would you like to speak? Maybe the hand's up by accident. So continue, Mr. Sangha.
So let's see. Regarding the 2 family, 1 family, as I mentioned in a statement of fact, 70% of residential building.
Yes, I'm sorry, Marjorie. I was on mute. May I speak before Mr. Sangha speaks?
Okay. All right. He was in the middle of a sentence, but okay.
Yes, I apologize. This
right.
to answer your previous question. We did do the title search on this lot, and I have a certified title in front of me regarding easement, and this is what it says on the in the quotes: subject to a right-of-way easement over the easterly 4 feet extending from the northerly side of 24th Avenue to the rear of the premises in favor of abutting lot 40.
Okay.
So,
Go ahead.
this is in the title search for Umar Chaudhary, and it's a certified title search from the title search company.
So because I don't have the plan right in front of me, is that giving 4 feet to Umar, or it's giving?
I can, I don't know if I can share my screen. It's on Umar's deed, actually.
It's on Umar's deed.
That's correct. Previous deed, previous owner's deed on
Right.
the title search, and it's on the deed itself.
Okay. All
From
right.
19, I'm sorry, this is, yes, it's on the deed.
Okay. Provide us with a copy of it, and
Will do.
and then Mr. Sangha, just make sure that you show on your drawings the scope of the easement that's in favor of your site. Okay, so we're all clear what you're entitled to use, okay?
Okay, but as I just listened to Sama's comment, but lot 40 is adjacent property, not our property.
Right, so that's what I was asking before. I wanted to make sure that Mr. Chowdhury has the right to access the back of his lot using a portion of lot 40 in the same way that 40 has the right to access the back of his lot using a portion.
Yes, Marjorie, this is Summer. I believe so because this is right on the deed.
Okay.
It says in favor of a building lot 40. So I believe it goes both ways. And we can
I'm not
confirm
sure.
this and provide you a copy of this.
Okay, yeah, I can't because I don't have it in front of me. I can't really verify. Okay, all right, Mr. Sangha, please continue. So you were talking about the 1 families and 2 families. What the board is saying is that your ask has to be directly related to the hardship complained of, right? And so the hardship is that your site is narrow, right? So having a waiver to allow a 2-family doesn't go to the narrowness of the site. That's going to the fact that the zoning regulations changed and no longer allows a 2-family as of right on a site this small. And it no longer allowed, we are sort of forced in the situation to consider a 0 lot line building, which is also not allowed in this district, but we're not forced, given the hardship of the narrow lot, to consider a 2-family, which would be a waiver beyond what's needed to sort of make the property owner whole. There are 1-family houses in this neighborhood too. So 2-family is not an assumed right. It's the same issue with the parking. We see plenty of houses that are 20 feet on lots that are 20 feet wide that have the required parking space. And especially in this case where you have a drive that takes you to the back and you can park your car or park it under the house or whatever. And then the other question, which is a little different, is the floor area increase request. We do get applications on narrow lots that either have or don't have side yard problems, where they say, but all I can build is 700 square feet on my lot, and what kind of a house is 700 square feet? So the way that they make that argument is they show us maps, and I think you actually did some study like that. They provide us maps that show what the floor areas are of the houses in the study area. And that way we can say, well, a 1,000 square foot house is far below what's considered the standard of acceptable in the neighborhood, because there are other areas where 1,000 square foot house could be an acceptable amount. And then the question is, what is the acceptable amount? You're suggesting it needs to be essentially 2,000 square feet, but maybe 1,500 square feet is more typical of the neighborhood. And what a variance does is it never is intended to grant more than what everybody else has. It's to make you equal to your neighbors, not better off than your neighbors. Okay? And there are many neighbors that have 20-foot wide lots. So you should be looking at 20-foot wide lots and what kind of houses are on those lots. Okay?
Yes, I understand.
Okay. So that'll make the application much faster if you don't push getting a parking waiver, push getting a front yard waiver, because we don't see any reason for it. And you focus on the kinds of waivers that would be appropriate to a narrow lot and a small amount, or let's say a relatively small house size for this neighborhood, if that's the case, because I don't know what the case is.
So I just wanted to say one thing. In that area, as Mr. Sangha mentioned, about 60% of the houses are 2-family. So, I mean, majority we're saying are two family.
But 40% are one family.
Right.
That means 40% of the people would be disadvantaged because if you had a two family and they only have a one family, we're making you better off than they are. And there isn't anything that says that a one family house is not a viable solution on the site.
I
Right?
got you. I got you.
Okay. So anything else, commissioners, is there anything else you want to make sure they address? Mr. Sonic? Okay, go ahead.
It might help when they do their study as to one family, two family, focus on those narrow lots and look at whether they are one family or whether they're also two families. And maybe that might inform you of the proper ask.
Okay, that's fair. Okay. And Mr. Sangha, do you have any other questions or anything you want to add?
No, I don't have it.
Okay, so let's go to the public. I don't think there's nobody in the waiting room who's not one of the applicants. Go ahead, Tony.
Okay, the case that we're discussing currently is 2019-91BZ 9709 24th Avenue, Queens. Should you wish to call in, it is 646-558-8656. Zoom webinar ID number is 925-0261-2349, and our passcode is 962863. If you're in the Zoom room already, please raise your hand. If you are calling in, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to speak.
Correct. Okay, and while we wait to see whether anyone is calling in, you have a number of studies to do, and then the project needs to be modified to respond to our comments. So essentially what we call the lesser variance, so it's to reduce the number of asks. And you also need to go to the Department of Buildings and verify for us that your solution for the 6-inch separation would be acceptable to DOB, because that's not something we deal with here. So how much time do you think you need for that? You may not really know the time, but like a broad estimate of how much time?
We have a similar situation time frame for the next application also. So
Yeah.
I would say 8 weeks.
Okay. Okay, thank you. All right then, nobody called in, so we can move on to the next one. Thank you very much.
Sure. Item number 33.
Oh, and let me just say, I'm marking 8 weeks to submit, and we'll let you know in a few days when the next hearing is, okay?
Thank you.
Item number 33, 2019-92BZ 23-39 98th Street, Queens. Okay, so let me swear you in. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board, and to respond honestly to board member questions?
I do.
Okay, please proceed, Mr. Sangha. Sangha, sorry.
We can help you out a little bit with questions. How about this? So do you remember the community board meeting in 2019?
Yes.
Can you give us a little more color on why they disapproved?
For previous 24th Avenue project, they are questioned mostly for dot line windows. And for this application was just size. They don't like size of the house.
Okay. Okay. Okay, continue with the question. Let's see. So just to clarify about the deed search information, this is something that, so you may have questions about this, but as you may have heard in the prior the case that was just before you, one of the counsel who appears before us very often reminded us that there's a case 127-14-BZ, which is on 101st Street in Queens, where there may have been a similar situation to what we've been talking about here, where two properties owned by the same owner, and one of the properties was foreclosed in a tax foreclosure. And this board may have considered that an acceptable intervening act of government to allow the application to proceed. So you should be looking at that case. We'll do the same. Maybe even pull the records of that case. That would be better than just looking at the resolution, because the records always have more information. And then making your argument based on what the board decided in that case. And that was done before we had Zoom hearings, but it wasn't done before we had videos of the hearings. So you could actually listen to the video of the board's consideration of that question and rely on that discussion, assuming that the board concluded the way that you would like us to conclude in this case, okay?
Yeah, actually, I did review that 127-14-BZ. I don't remember everything, but I have a copy of that resolution. So I will be, studying that issue. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, and then, so that's a big issue for us. That's like maybe the major issue. So, and then similarly, same subject about why a two-family, a one-family should also be acceptable here, because it puts you at an advantage over the one families in the neighborhood. Also, this is a 20-foot wide site that doesn't have an easement. So really the building should be providing a required side yard. And this is where Commissioner Shanda was getting into it, that had this been an R32 zoning district, you would have been able to comply with the regulations and even provide a 0 lot line with the required side yard. So so one approach to this is maybe you pursue that so it's more consistent with R32 neighborhood character. And then another approach might be that you have a 15-foot wide house like your other site, and you settle the house in the center so that at least you have little side yards on either side to have breathing room between the neighbors. And then you don't have to deal with that weird 6-inch situation, plus an angry neighbor. Always trying to avoid the angry neighbor, plus underpinning problems, right? Because if you're building 6 inches away, now you have an issue with underpinning, and you're going to need permission from the neighbor to underpin. And if you build 2.5 feet away or 3 feet away, then correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Sheta, you may not need to underpin. Is 3 feet enough?
I don't know if 3 feet and the adjacent building are shallow enough, foundations are shallow enough. Mm-hmm. They might not need to underpin, but if the adjacent building has a cellar, I believe 3 feet is not enough. If they are, yeah, it depends, and it depends on what is the existing condition for that building, for the foundation of that building, and what are the proposed condition for the new building, and what kind of soil material is that. So if you have, let's say you have rock subgrade, even if it's 1 foot, you could live with that. But if you have granular material, it's totally different world here. So It depends.
One
I
side
don't
is,
think they have rock at the location. At the location of that site, I don't think they have like rocks that shallow. So I'm skeptical that 3 feet is enough at all.
Forego underpinning. Go ahead, Mr. Son, you wanted to say something?
yeah, one side is 3 foot 9 inches, and the other side is 6 feet. That's their side yard.
Actually, no. I think one side of the site has a 2-story big building with a staircase that is built up to the lot line. So the building is set back 3 foot 10 inches where the basement is. The basement doesn't extend into the property line. So the basement to the property line, there's a distance of 3 foot 6 inches, according to the applicant's plan. I'm just looking at the applicant's plan.
Okay.
And the other building is located 6 foot 1 inches from the property line.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So you don't have that kind of the issue.
Right. None of the buildings are built to the lot line, unlike the previous application, where one of the building is built to the lot line. In this case, both the buildings, abutting buildings are there's a
okay.
3
So
foot 10 and 6 foot 1.
So in that case, if to maintain the side of your building, you can gain access from the neighbor if you've got permission, and which is always an issue. And then, so providing a 5 foot side yard would actually comply with R32 regulations, which was the standard typology up until whatever that was, 2014, right? So rather than a 20 foot wide building, we're talking about a 15 foot wide building with 5 foot side yard.
Just for your information, I'm talking about this application. Those road on each Jason road on each side is 40 feet wide roads.
Yes.
And they are building with about 26 feet wide, both. Yes.
Right. But again, we are looking at the scope of the waiver, right? So we understand that yours is an abnormally small lot compared to those, but the hardship complained of is that your lot is narrow. So we're looking at a waiver to allow you to build a house that's wider than whatever that was, 5 feet wide, right? Something like that. So, but the other house that you're proposing that's down the street is 15 feet wide. So that's that's telling us that a 15 foot wide house is a wide enough house to occupy, so that there isn't a reason to have no side yard at all. That's what's driving for me. The house down the street is going to be 15 feet wide. Why does this house have to be 20 foot wide? We've just demonstrated that that's adequate. I mean,
that's because we proposed the one parking space in front of the building. And on top of that, the road depth is 97.5, 2.5 feet shorter than 100 feet. So that's why.
right. But I don't see the reason for a 30 foot rear yard waiver. Your site is not bizarrely shallow. It's only a little bit shallow. So it could provide the 30 foot, right? I mean, commissioners, step in if you disagree with my thinking about the width. It's just that we have another application that's 15 feet wide. Like, don't they have to establish that no other houses in the neighborhood are 15 feet wide, or very few, or something like that? Commissioner,
Yeah, I don't think
Madam-
have feet.
Commissioner
Madam
Ali Brown,
Chair.
you're
Sorry.
speaking, but you're muted. Just 1 second. Let her. No, you weren't speaking?
No, I wasn't speaking. I was just nodding my assent to you.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right. Vice Chair Shanda, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, especially, it's probably not fair. We have two applications at the same time in the same neighborhood. And in one case where a 15 foot wide building is feasible, but in this case where it is not encumbered by much of the easement issues, a 15 foot wide is not feasible, it's very difficult to justify unless the applicant can show that in the neighborhood, there are very few 15-foot wide buildings, and the ones that are there, I know we did a case, this is like, this was in College Point, College Point and Whitestone, something like that, where the applicant had to go through the whole rigor to show why the 15-foot wide or 17-foot wide, I think in that case, was not feasible, and why they needed yard waiver, so I think that exercise that has to be gone through to make the argument.
They actually did go through that exercise.
Yes.
For their character finding.
Exactly.
And it doesn't prove their point, though.
It didn't, finally.
No, because out of the 11 lots that are 20-foot wide, 6 of them actually have 17-foot wide homes.
Right.
So that proves that they don't need 20 feet. It's definitely feasible to have 17 feet.
Okay, that's this case or the College Point case?
No, that's this case.
Okay, I don't know what, you're looking at that open space diagram?
No, it was in the character finding.
Oh, it was. Okay, sorry. Okay. Okay.
So it seems there is a room for either do a 15 and a 5-foot side yard or do a 17 and a 3-foot side yard. But definitely not a 20-foot zero lot line without any side yard.
Right. Okay, and then provide the
and then also the rear yard, there is no reason for a rear yard reduction. It's I think it's just three foot we are talking about. So
okay, and then the same argument has to be made about the floor area. What's the typical floor area in this neighborhood? Give us a chart showing to the floor areas of the houses in the study area so that we can understand what's the right scope of this waiver. And
well, their average floor area is 0.61 within 400-foot radius, and the median is 0.68.
Right, but
neither of which support their claims.
Right, but so it's floor area plus the FAR. Someone has background noise, please mute yourself. The floor area on the immediate lots are 40-foot wide. So when you say it's a 0.6 FAR, those are big houses by comparison to this one. So we really, I think it should be looking at floor area in this case rather than FAR, because this is an abnormally narrow lot. That's why I'm thinking it's a floor area study more than an FAR study. Okay. Okay. Any other comments, questions, Mr. Sangha, Mr. Chowdhury?
We go to the public.
Yeah, I don't hear from them. Okay, if you want to jump in.
I don't have any more comments or statement. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's go.
I'm good as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 33, 2019-92BZ, 23 and 39 98th Street, Queens. If you wish to call in regarding this application, it's 646-558-8656. Zoom webinar ID number is 925-0261-2349, and the passcode is 962863. If you're in the Zoom room, please raise your Zoom hand. If you are calling in, press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute.
Okay, good. So while we're waiting to see if anyone calls in, I'm assuming the same 8 weeks to submit a response, because you don't need to go to DOB in this case.
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's just give it a few minutes to see if anyone calls in. I thought maybe your neighbor might call in. No. Okay. Okay then. So any last minute comments from commissioners? Can't see everybody. No, okay. So then that's it. So we will let you know when the next hearing is in a few days, okay?
Thank you. Have a nice afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Tony.
This concludes the public hearing for February 23rd, 2021, 2 p.m. session.
Yay. Thank you, everyone, very much. Have a good rest.